Hi, everybody. My name is Max Taylor. I am a master's student at Grand Canyon University studying secondary education. And today I'm going to be doing a brief little sort of overview of uh, professional dispositions and the dispositions of learners uh, and how they apply to the teaching profession. But to start, let's probably discuss a little bit of what is the teacher's role. Um, And I think just kind of in broad strokes, a teacher's role is to support learning, to really facilitate that and ensure that their students are, to the best of the teacher's ability, being equipped with the knowledge and skills that they will need to be able to succeed later on in life. Of course, this can't be done just kind of spur of the moment. There needs to be a plan, which means that teachers have to spend time planning out their lessons and also getting to know their students. And this also means that teachers need to be able to collaborate with one another to make the learning environment as beneficial as possible. Furthermore, there's a certain expectation that society has of teachers that they need to uphold because if they aren't upholding that uh, those expectations, then nobody's going to want to send their kids to school. Nobody's going to want to send students to school, and that would be bad. Now, uh, let's talk kind of more about me for a sec. Let's talk about the some of those dispositions and how they apply to me in particular. Not trying to be arrogant and say, "Oh, look at how great I am," because believe me, we are also going to talk about where I need to improve. But uh, if I flip over to the GCU or Grand Canyon University College of Education Professional Dispositions of Learners um, paper, I see that there are 10 of them here. Now, I'm not going to go into all of them for the sake of time, but let's talk just a few of these that um, I exemplify, as well as one or two that I could improve on, or at least ones that I feel like I exemplify and feel like I could improve on. First one is fairness. That's one that I feel like that I excel at because I like to see everybody treated fairly. I like to see, I have a very strong sense of right and wrong, and I like to see that in the world as well. I also consider myself to be quite honest and compassionate. Maybe we're gonna also throw honesty maybe into a little bit of what I can also improve on because sometimes I might be a little too honest and just to the point of being uh, rude and blunt, which is suppose also professional conduct. But compassion is something that I feel like ties in very closely with fairness, and it's something I like to see, uh, that I like to exemplify myself, but I also like to see others show this as well. Now, we've already talked about how I feel like I could probably improve on professional conduct, especially as it relates to honesty. There are some times where I feel like I need to think before I speak and make sure that the words that I say are in line with the expectations of teachers. Just don't want to say something that could be taken the wrong way. But I also feel like I could probably work on advocacy. I'm very adverse to conflict, to confrontation, and that does lead me to kind of shy away from stepping up to advocate for change in uh anything really. Now, let's also talk a little bit about what effect can personal bias have on teaching and learning. And first of all, let's recognize that there's always going to be bias, but we want to keep those biases in check. Uh, as an example, I have noticed in the world that sometimes people look at students with special needs as almost less than. And it's an ugly, ugly kind of bias, especially because it's also so often just wrong. Because students with special needs, or we could also call them exceptional students, exceptional children, uh, they they can appear in many metaphorical shapes and forms. Some of them do struggle with learning, but others are geniuses that maybe more struggle with social interaction. And if you can think of something that might qualify as a special need, there's probably a student that has that as a special need. And so to group them all together as special needs is maybe not the best way to address this bias, but that is a discussion for another time. According to the expectations of the profession, um, I feel like to a certain extent, teachers should be expected and are expected to maintain a certain clinical detachment from those biases. And instead of they're expected to not see those those differences, but rather see the similarities in their students and are expected to treat all of their students with the same respect as they would treat anyone else. In fact, let's go over to the InTask or the Interstate Teacher Assessment and Support Consortium. They put out a handbook uh, outlining a couple of standards, and we're going to look at their standard number one, which is learner development. One of them says that the teacher needs to respect the learner's different strengths and needs, and needs to be committed to using this information to further the development of each of their students. Because as we know, no two students are going to be the same. They're all going to learn in their own little ways, and certainly we can't like tailor our classes to every single particular student individually because that's too much work, and it would take too long and it's not efficient. But at the same time, we don't want to adopt a one size fits all mentality and using the bias of, oh, I can just teach all the students the same way is not really going to work. Let's see. We're running out of time here, so in fact, we might be running overtime, and I do apologize. So let's finally reflect on, or I can reflect just before we close on my own professional dispositions related to education, um, and how I plan to uphold uh, that those dispositions. Mainly, uh, I find myself agreeing with most of these dispositions. Actually, I can't think of any of the dispositions that I don't agree with. They are all really, really great dispositions. And I find myself a little chagrined that there are some that I need to work on, but I suppose I'm only human, so it's to be expected. Um, How will I uphold them, however? Well, let's take another look at those dispositions. First of all, the first disposition is actually to set high expectations. That's to set high expectations for students, but I think it can also be applied to myself as a teacher. I should set high expectations for myself as a teacher and expect that I'm going to uphold these dispositions. I can incorporate honesty by maybe finding somebody to be accountable to, and ensure that I am being held accountable, as well as regularly reflect upon my behavior and how well I'm doing at upholding these dispositions. This way, I can adhere to that academic and professional integrity as a teacher candidate and as a future teacher. Now, again, I do apologize. I feel like we've run a little bit over time, but I want to thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.